On a very hot day in Florida, Andy was digging up his lawn and preparing to plant sod because the homeowners association said, if you don't clean this place up, we're going to give you a hefty fine tomorrow. So, of course, he procrastinated a bit, and this day he's digging and digging. The only break he took from his work was to keep watering the sod so it wouldn't dry out. Well, in the middle of his big task there, he developed chest pain and he fell over on the grass. His wife called 911. The ambulance came and they said to him, "You're having a heart attack." And he said, "No, I'm having to finish this grass. The sod's going to dry out. I have to do this today or I'm getting a fine." Well, they were kind of big ambulance people, and they put him in the ambulance. The whole time he's freaking out, saying, "I have to finish this lawn. I have to finish my lawn. Let me out. If you give me 2 minutes, I'll be fine and I can go back to it." Well, they brought him to the hospital. Indeed, he was in crisis, and they needed to have a procedure for him, and he was fighting them. So the wife came, and she said to him, "Listen, I just came from home. I got some good news for you." He's like, yeah. And she said, "Yes." The ambulance drivers got 3 or 4 of their friends, and they're all at home putting in the sod. "So now will you please allow this to happen so you can go on living?" Well, of course, he had some peace, and it turned out that everything was fine. So that day, these ambulance drivers not only saved his life, but they saved his lawn. And what was he a little bit more attached to? The lawn. Crazy, right? But you're laughing. We understand this man. When we get an idea in our head, it sticks. It's very hard to shake the concept we have about what is supposed to be happening. Even though there's evidence to the contrary all around, we have new information that says this is now important or this is how it is. What do? We cling to our idea of what's supposed to happen. It's called an unhealthy attachment. And you see the little thing, the little emoji fellow there with the question marks coming out of his head? That's when we realize it's an unhealthy attachment. We say, "What was I thinking?" Impossible sometimes to clearly see our way, even with God's help, to accept the reality of our present situation. Doesn't mean we can't work to change it, but we need to recognize what's really happening, not our idea of what's happening, and we call that an unhealthy attachment to an idea. We can be unhealthily attached to people, to our idea of what they should be saying and doing. Ever happened to you? Yeah, this is our main life's work, it seems to me, okay? Knowing what everybody else should be doing and saying. An unhealthy attachment. If you're saying, "I don't think this applies to me," who pushes your buttons? Who, even the thought of them, makes your head ready to explode? That's an unhealthy attachment. Where there's not peace, there's an opportunity for growth. Doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you keep going back to that painful place. The buttons keep getting pushed. Wouldn't it be nice to be freed from that kind of obsession? It'd be a relief. And then the third way we can be attached unhealthily, and this we understand a little better, is in our behavior, right? I'm going on a diet. I'm going on a diet. The point is going, not I'm on one or have been, right? There's always the future thing. Or it could be food, it could be other addictions, whatever it is, there's behaviors or things that we wish we were doing. I'm going to walk, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to clean my room. We have, again, fixed things, unhealthy attachment to what's happening or not happening, to the inability sometimes for change. So sometimes we're unwilling, sometimes it feels that we're unable. These are exactly the areas where God desires to help us. And we hear it in the Gospels and the readings today. Amos says that the main point in the spiritual life is not to grow complacent, not to throw up our hands and say, it's the way it is. That's not acceptance. Acceptance is recognizing what is and then choosing the next right or loving thing to do. It's not giving up. It's facing a reality and then making a new plan, not sticking to the old one. You get what I'm saying? And then St. Paul says that the way we can tell where we need some help, if we're not able to express gentleness, understanding, and compassion in whatever area, then those are the places where we need some work. Those are the places where we have an unhealthy attachment that causes us stress and then helps us pass it on to other people. And the gospel's really a good story today. A difficult little parable, but it has a good point. And for our conversation, it has to do with the unhealthy attachment that the rich man had to his idea of himself. He had an idea of who he was, and he stuck to it to his detriment. So he dies. He's on the other side. He's not happy. It's explained to him that Lazarus is his equal, that, it was very clear. In this life, he didn't have a good time. In this life, you both are on equal footing. But the idea that the rich man had of himself didn't change even after death. Because what does he do? He starts telling Abraham what to do. Hey, Abraham, I'm in charge here. You go get Lazarus and get him to get me some water. Abraham's like, really? I don't think so, okay? I mean, that's not what it said, but if I wrote it, that's what it would have said, okay? So, and then the next step, he says, well, if you're not going to do that, I'll give you something else to do. Go send him to tell my brothers. So the rich man's still finding work for Lazarus, even from the other side. Lazarus is not his servant, but the poor rich man can't get off his track. He's attached to his idea about what's supposed to be happening, not accepting his current situation, okay? Not even saying please, which sometimes changes everything. So that's a good example. You see that where he's stuck in the story, okay? He got stuck with the unhealthy attachment, not accepting his reality. Now, if he accepted his reality, acknowledged the new information he had from the other side, who knows how that parable would have gone. There was potential for growth and change in that. So I want to do one more thing with you. I want to share that when I read this story of this guy from Florida who was obsessed with his lawn, even when he was having a heart attack, I felt great. Do you know why? Because the same thing happened to me in June, right? I had the heart attack. I go to the hospital. It was the day of Father Kevin's anniversary. Nothing was going to change my mind that I better be back here by 10 o'clock or at least noon. I'm on the phone. I'm torturing for Father Matt. Say this, don't say that, do this, do that. Finally, and they're trying to do things to me, I'm saying, get out. I have important work to do today. Don't you understand? Duh. Okay, but honestly, at the time, I was completely unself-aware. I had my job to do, and my idea of what was supposed to be happening wasn't happening. I could not change tracks until my brother-in-law went outside of they keep her in the little room, and he said, my brother-in-law is a good guy, but he's a little cuckoo. He doesn't understand what's happening here. Could someone please tell him he needs to change his plan for the day? So they sent 8 people in and said, Joe, you're attached to an idea of this day that you're not going anywhere. And of course, I prayerfully received this information graciously. No, but what happened is one of the nurses said, you're making your family more crazy than they need to be. They're already upset, and you're not helping anything because you need to be helped by us, and you're fighting it. And they were making them more upset than they need to be. Well, that was like slap therapy. Because then I realized that my idea was blocking me from being who I was being called to be at the time, a patient who needed help, right? A brother to my family, right? I needed to cooperate so that I could get the help I needed and that they would have less stress. I was making it all worse. For good reason, I thought that this was what's supposed to be happening. The movement from this unhealthy attachment to my idea of what was supposed to be happening to accept what was happening was a very hard transition, and it did happen, first of all, by confrontation, someone saying, hey, wake up, but it had to happen with prayer, because just because they said that didn't get me off the track. I was praying, God, help me to accept what I cannot change. I used our prayer from a couple of themes ago, and it didn't happen in a moment. You know, I didn't like what was happening, but it's a process. If I hadn't invited God into it, I probably would have just left the hospital. Then I'd be like that rich man, a drop of water. Okay, so I know that was where that was going. But anyway, so I didn't mean to bring a personal story in, but these are not ideas. They are real realities that we deal with and opportunities for God to come into our everyday lives in the crisis things, in the silly things, in the things that annoy us to make a difference. So in conclusion today, I have a prayer practice, which is something we do to help us to take these ideas and apply them in our life. Okay, so you know you have the prayer card, which helps us to say, where am I here? Which one of these things is my problem at the moment? But I also came up with an imaginative prayer to use our imagination to do something to rid ourselves of these unhealthy attachments, the things that bother us. Sometimes we have to do it a few times, but I just want to take you through that today. It'll only take a minute or so. What's the sense of talking about this praying stuff? We're all here, let's do it, okay? So if you would just close your eyes for 1 second. Oh, before you do, you notice the balloon? That'll be featuring into this. So just keep that in your imagination. Just close your eyes for a second. Take a deep breath. We are in God's presence. God desires to help us in our unhealthy attachments, our ideas, the people in our lives, our behavior. Identify with God one unhealthy attachment that you recognize. Don't dwell on it, just name it honestly with God. And don't judge yourself for it. If you think about it, that's God's grace saying to you, hey, look at this, and let me help you. Picture blowing that unhealthy attachment into a balloon. It takes some effort to blow something into a balloon. Blow it in the balloon. Get it out of yourself. And then tie a knot in that balloon and let it go. Ascending into God's care. Pray as you see that balloon float off. God, grant me the serenity to accept what I cannot change by trusting in your providence. Or use any of the scriptures from last week. Unhealthy attachments have a way of floating back down to us like balloons. This is normal. When it returns, use your imagination to gently tap the balloon back into God's care. Take a positive action. The most effective way to shift our focus in mind and heart from unhealthy attachments is to concentrate on the well-being of someone else, to become attached to a next right or loving thing to do. What one action can you take to help another person? There is surely someone in your life who needs a little sod planted today. Lord, turn our faces with grace to love. Amen.